everybody! In today's video, I'm going to do a little demonstration that has been requested a few times, especially after I talked about it in a video a little while back. And it is a classic apex, what you would consider to be like a wearable apex versus a hidden apex that's used more in a competition setting. And they both have a stress point, they both have a strength area. In the hidden apex, you tip the form up so that there's this little groove between the natural nail and the form, this little like dip down, a little valley. And that's where you fill in and you create a thicker point there. So the apex is essentially invisible. You don't see it. The nail is stick straight. It comes out completely straight. It is actually a very extreme, very interesting, I think a beautiful look to do. It isn't as strong. I wouldn't say I would recommend wearing it or sculpting this way on yourself, but for something fun to do, for an extreme thing or a certain evening or a night out and you want to have this really striking look, this is definitely an option. So stay tuned. I have a nice little side-by-side demo going through all the different ins and outs of each style, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. I'll see you next time. Bye!
So here we are. We're going to start with what I would call an American apex, because European apexes, Russian, etc., have slightly different styles to them. So we're going to fit the form, and we want the form. The one I have that I'm using currently has some nice straight guidelines, and I chose that form specifically for that because that does help. Some of them have different guidelines, but not these super straight ones that are easy to see. So we're going to use those to our advantage, and I pinch the end of my form. I'm going to slide it under the free edge, and then before I go ahead and start sculpting, I'm going to take a straight edged file and I'm going to hold it up to my lines, and I'm just going to see if everything looks nice and straight. So you're going to go from the first knuckle, the first joint on the finger, and think of like a little 90-degree angle coming out, and you want that line to be straight from right there. If that is how your form looks, then you are good to proceed on to sculpting. So I'm going to sculpt first with a little bit of clear acrylic and blend the natural nail, or my funny little nail tip on my practice finger, out onto the form just to create a smooth transition from nail to form. And I'm going to take that out to about where I'm sculpting, which for both of these nails is around a 6 on my nail form. And then I'm going to take my nail bed area and I'm going to be sculpting that with my Cover Pink, and I'm doing this to the 2. So I'm making an extended nail bed. That part is really irrelevant for this whole apex versus hidden apex. You wouldn't even have to do this. It wouldn't necessarily need to be a French tip. This could be done completely with just clear acrylic. I just think that you kind of get to see it better with it being a French tip. I don't know why, but it just seems like it's more clear what, where the different things are, in my mind at least. So we're going to be sculpting our apex in, and as you're sculpting this, as you can see, the acrylic has a rounded appearance to it. It's not straight. Everything I'm sculpting has kind of a rounded, softened appearance on the top of this nail. And I'm doing this in 3 beads. That is my personal way. I always sculpt a nail bed. I like to do it in a minimum of 3 beads. I'm going to add a little bit more actually to my apex area just to make sure that I have plenty of room to file later. So I'm going to look at it from the side. It should have a nice curve to it. If you don't have enough of an apex, like I decided I didn't, I'm going to sculpt in some more and just make sure that I have enough. Especially when you're sculpting a nail bed, more acrylic on there is not a problem because you're going to file it. And so if you have some extra, that's a good thing. Once you have it, or you're happy with your apex and you're happy with the shape of your nail bed, leave the form on, but we're going to be filing the free edge to make sure it is symmetrical, very straight sided, and just clean. Everything about this, we want it to be clean. We want both of these French tips to be elegant and just gorgeous and beautiful, but different. So we don't want anything to appear, I don't know, like you got it done at the mall in a sketchy rundown nail chop shop. That's not what we want here. Then we're going to take our white acrylic and we're going to be sculpting it, sculpting in our tip. So you're going to take and fill in that white acrylic all the way up. You're going to tuck it in to the little tippy top corners of your smile line and then bring it all the way down to that number 6. I also overlapped my smile line just a smidge. It is, I think it just looks a little bit cleaner if you do it that way after you get done filing it. Currently, it looks somewhat haphazard, but later on, it looks really nice. When you do it that way, when you just cover up a little bit of your smile line, it just looks a little bit smoother. So we're going to just take and fill that in all the way down our nail tip and then go in all the way up the corners. I work with a fairly small nail tip, or fairly small acrylic brush, and so I always do things in more beads than other people do, depending. Some people are a 1 bead method preacher. I'm not. I like to do things in a couple and just sort of take my time with it. different strokes for different folks. Whatever works for you is fantastic. If you really like working with a number 16 brush and you can sculpt this white French tip in a single bead and get it down and it looks beautiful and it's fast, awesome. That is, that's great. But for me, I don't prefer that, and it's personal preference. Then we're going to be cleaning up the nail shape with the e-file, just going over it. You're also going to find that your smile line is revealed in this process. I'm just going to go through and clean it up as much as I can, like I said, with that e-file. But know that not just for this video, but I always go back over my acrylic nails with a hand file, whether I'm sculpting it on practice tips, the practice finger, or myself. I will go back through with my hand file at the end just to do some nice little retouching, because it always just looks a little bit better after a hand file has graced the surface. So we're going to go over, file the free edge, file the top, and then wipe the nail down with some acetone soaked onto a lint-free wipe. Just wipe it all the way down. That will melt the surface of the nail and give it a really smooth appearance. Once that's done, you can finish this nail off with a thin layer of gel top coat, and this one is done. And if you do plan on making 2 of these just to see the difference between the American Apex versus a hidden Apex, then I would recommend doing the one that first, doing the American Apex first and just watching what you do, and then doing the weird one, the hidden Apex, second. And maybe that's not how you want to do it, but I think it just kind of gives you a good perspective to have a baseline that you just sculpted one before you try to do the crazy one. So here's the first one, beautiful C curve. As you can see, there will be a nice C curve on the other one as well. It's just really nice to get a good view of what this nail looks like. And if you want a full comprehensive video on sculpting a smile line and acrylic and just acrylic basics, I do have a live class, and I can put a link to that in the description box below. So now for the hidden Apex, I'm going to be closing my form and starting out just like I did with the other one. So I've got the end of my form closed, and then before I pinch it down onto the fingernail, I'm tipping it up. And you're tipping it up so that you have to know how long the nail is going to be. And then after you tip it up, you want that highest point of the nail, the tip of the nail, to be at about the highest point of the natural nail. And you want to use your straight edged hand file for this. So I know I'm sculpting to a 6, so you want that to line up, and you just have to kind of envision it. Once you have that, could you guys see that little groove in the nail, where the groove is going to be? Then you're going to cut open the wings of the nail form, the sides of the nail form, kind of peel those back a little bit just to release some of the pressure. And then you can even press that form in a little bit and tip it up further. So you want the form to have this really, upward angle. So this is what it looks like from the top. It doesn't look too crazy. And then after you have that done, you're going to blend it into the natural nail just like you did with the other one, keeping in mind you're not blending it down and out like you did with the other one, because it doesn't go that far. It just gets blended on a little bit. So just apply that over the top like that, kind of blend it out just slightly. It does help, I think, to have a base layer of clear acrylic. And that way also, if your form gets bumped, I've done that before with my own nails, especially when I'll be sculpting, I'll bump my nail form and it'll loosen. You've got a clear base on there, and you probably don't need the form anyway. But then we're going to be sculpting our nail bed with Cover Pink again out to the second line on my nail form. And when you're doing this, you'll see me doing a little different shapes with my brush, kind of a different structure. I'm going to be, you see I've put the bead down, I'm going to pat it around the sides, and then I'm going to kind of flatten it out. You see how I pulled it down straight? I'm not leaving a bulk of acrylic in the middle, which is what you normally would do. And that's not what you're doing here. You're pulling it out. You're pulling it straight down the nail. It's super thin at the cuticle. Do you see how straight that nail bed is? Super, super stick straight. When you put your nail file on top of it, it should go to about the length of the nail that you want. Then you're going to file the smile line just as you did before, making sure it is nice and straight, smooth, even, symmetrical, etc., etc. Kind of going over it. You want to use a straight-sided, non-flexible file to file your smile lines. You don't want one that has any kind of a foamy or padded texture to it, or one that has a curved side. When you're looking for the right kind of a hand file for this, I like to find one with a wooden core. Then you're going to take your nail brush and just brush off any extra dust that's hanging around, and then fill in the tip with white acrylic, making sure that you build up the white acrylic so it is at least the height of that smile line. If we're going to file this straight later, we have to make sure that we do have a little bit of extra acrylic, that once you go to start filing it, you don't end up with Have you guys heard the term ski jump nail, where nails tip up, where there is a concave apex instead of either a flat or a nice convex apex where it kind of bumps out, it kind of like tucks in and then goes up? A lot of people have that issue with their natural nails, but when you're sculpting a competition style nail like this one, I've also seen that ski jump style nail then too. So we're going to bring that white acrylic all the way down, and then after you have it all filled in, make sure you're looking at it from the sides. You want nice straight sidewalls. You can even take your acrylic and take it down the nail form quite a ways. I've seen a lot of people recently, so they don't accidentally have a sidewall that is too short. They'll take it down the nail form quite a bit just to have extra space, so that when they go to file, they have room to file. And then you're going to just, after you have all of this acrylic applied and you're happy with the shape and you look at it from all sides and see how nice and straight it is already, then you're just going to remove that nail form and file this into shape. I'm also going to take off that tape just because it was sort of bugging me. And then we're going to take the e-file, and instead of going across the nail like up and over from left to right or right to left, I'm going to be going down it from cuticle to tip, for the most part at least. And when you're doing that, you're enforcing those straight lines. Do know, however, that these straight lines aren't going to only come from an e-file. This is another circumstance where a hand file is just super required because it just gets everything a little bit straighter. The one I'm using now is slightly padded, but it isn't as much as like a padded buffer like some of them that I've seen. So even though it does have a little bit of a squish to it, it's not quite as much, and you can get a nice straight line out of the top of your nail. Once that is nice and straight, you can remove the lint from it and then apply a layer of gel top coat. So did you guys see, I hope you guys saw where that apex comes from? It's right at the tip of the nail, right at the tip of the natural nail, because the e-file, or not the e-file, the form tips up, so then it creates that valley. And if there's any questions, like I said, don't hesitate to ask me. I really hope that everything kind of made sense. This isn't something that is as strong. The apex isn't nearly as thick as with a normally sculpted nail. It is there, it's just kind of sneaky. So I hope that this helps out and answers any questions you may have. Here's a nice little side-by-side of the two different ways that I sculpted them. I think they're both beautiful, and they both have their time and their place. From the top, you don't hardly even see the difference in them. They are slightly different, but they're both just super beautiful French tips that are sculpted. I hope this helps. Like I said, I will always be around for questions, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!